If you know the story of the Iraq War or the Second Persian Gulf War, you know that Saddam Hussein falls, his entire government falls, and the United States enters Baghdad. This video isn't entirely about the Iraq War, it's about what happens after Saddam falls and the US takes over the country, especially the capital Baghdad. One of the first plans the US had about Baghdad was to create a safe zone, and inside that safe zone, create one of the best and biggest embassy it could. An embassy that's known as the most important embassy in the world. This is the story of the embassy of the US in Baghdad. The safe zone that the Americans chose, also known as the Green Zone, is right next to the Tigris River in the heart of Baghdad. It is also where all the other government buildings are located, so it's a prime location. This Green Zone is 10 square kilometers. Inside the Green Zone, right by the Tigris River, the US got some prime property that's about 40 hectares, or damn near 100 acres. And this is where they wanted to build the biggest embassy in the entire world. Usually countries have to purchase or rent the land their embassy is located on. Then they start building on that said property. But as you know, the US did not purchase this land. It was given to them by the new Iraqi government. It is insane because this piece of property is so prime and it's such an insane location in the capital city of a country that even if you offered hundreds of millions of dollars, they realistically wouldn't sell it. But since it was the Americans and they had won the war technically and taken over your country, they were kind of forced to give them this piece of prime property. Anyways, in the year 2004, when the Americans got the hold of this property, they started building their dream embassy. They hired an American construction company called Berger Divine Jaeger to build the embassy because they were not going to hire any Iraqis. Even the workers that would work inside this would not be Iraqis. They would bring immigrants from Kuwait, which were mainly Bangladeshi, so they can construct this embassy. And it is also good to know that these workers were only used for the outside or places that were not classified, because for inside the embassy, they had to bring in Americans. And since they would have to fly a very long time and work long hours, the Americans were paid an insane amount of money, an amount of money that wasn't a problem for the US government at this time. After a couple years, they put $736 million into this embassy, and 4 years later, in 2008, the biggest embassy in history is ready. But what is happening inside the embassy? First and foremost, there is a 6-story apartment building for all the employees to live in. And of course, there are some single-family homes that look like American houses for the diplomats and the higher-ups, so they don't have to live in the apartment building. There's 2 huge office buildings where all the employees go and work every day. There's another building that's separate. That's the entire food court. There's all types of fast food, mainly American foods inside this food court, and it's all free, because the people that go in there are all employees of the government. It's interesting to note that all the food ingredients come from the United States, go to Kuwait, and fly into Baghdad, so they don't buy any supplies from Iraq. Anyways, inside the walls is pretty much like the US. There's a dance club, there's a mechanic center for all the American cars and the government cars, a huge supermarket where all the foods come from America, and it seems like you just walked into a store in the US. There is a movie theater, swimming pool, tennis court, football court, a gym, a barber shop, etc. There's also an urgent care facility, which is pretty much like a hospital. So if anything happens, they don't have to go outside the walls to get treated. They can get treated inside the embassy. As you know, after the Iraq War, Baghdad and the entirety of Iraq has never recovered. It is also known as one of the most dangerous capital cities to this day. And that's why the Green Zone, which is 10 square kilometers, is very important. And it is also heavily protected. It's interesting to note that until 2018, no Iraqi citizen was allowed to enter the Green Zone. And even after they changed the law in 2018, they could only enter in cars, not trucks, from 5 to 7 p.m. So pretty much when it gets dark, no one is allowed in except US personnel and military. Even though Baghdad has one of the worst traffics in the world, The green zone doesn't help that. It also makes the city more unorganized because a huge portion of it is taken off. While outside the green zone, it is heavily unorganized. Inside the green zone, everything is much better. There's less traffic, the landscaping is better, the streets are cleaner, and they just take better care of this area. Of course, the people of Iraq are very angry that their capital city is missing a chunk of it, and most people aren't allowed in that area. And just like we said, inside the green zone, everything is much better. And why is it that outside the walls, they can't do this? And it has to be unstable and unsafe. But unfortunately, the Iraq government and the US government do not care. Another interesting fact about the embassy itself is the water, the electricity, and the sewer system. These are all produced inside the embassy itself, so they don't rely on Iraq. That means if electricity goes out in Baghdad, the embassy has full electricity. A lot of Americans, even senators, are mad that the US government is spending this much money on just electricity. They say each year the diesel generators that produce electricity in the embassy cost $25 to $30 million. They're mad because the embassy can get electricity from the city of Baghdad, and if it ever goes out, the diesel generators can turn on. But the people in charge of the embassy don't want to do that. They want to always run on the generators. The internet inside the embassy is completely different from Iraq itself. It's much faster. Even the telephone number is a Virginia telephone. It doesn't even have anything to do with this country. It's kind of like having an independent country inside the capital of Iraq. And it could be counted as an independent country because it's bigger than Vatican City, the smallest country in the world. All the buildings you're seeing inside the embassy is anti-bomb. So any explosion or bomb hits them, nothing happens to them. And of course, all the doors and windows are bulletproof. It has a 3-meter tall wall with barbed wires all on top of it. And outside of it, there are soldiers and guards guarding it at all times. There is 6 entrances all across the embassy. But nobody really uses these, because if anybody wants to come in or get out, they just use helicopters to go to the nearby airports. Normal workers go to the international airport in Baghdad, which is very nearby, and they can fly out of this airport to wherever they need. But diplomats and personnel are more secretive. They could go to the international airport, they could go to a US airbase nearby, they could even fly to Kuwait and fly with a helicopter all the way to Baghdad. It just depends how they want to do it that day. As you know, Donald Trump's first term, he came to Baghdad with the Air Force One, and this time they landed in the international airport. He also explained they had to turn off the lights before getting close to the city just in case. So it's very unsafe to go to that airport. You could say the US Embassy in Baghdad is a little piece of America inside the heart of that capital. And that was their way of controlling the Middle East. And of course, alongside the diplomats and the military, CIA is extremely active inside this embassy. But of course, they haven't officially stated that. But a lot of experts say that the CIA is highly active in the American embassy in Iraq. In an article of New York Times in the year 2020, it has been said that this embassy has the biggest budget in the entire world. Each year, it costs the US government $6 billion to operate this embassy. So not only is this place the biggest embassy in the world, it's the most expensive as well. Some say, why don't they make Baghdad a stable capital city so they can have a more secure location for their most important embassy? We truly don't know. Let us know what you think.